Hi everyone and welcome back. My name is Maor. I'm a spiritual mentor. This video series is called the Ascension Mastery. If you haven't watched any of the videos before, you should just make yourself a point of watching them just before you watch this video. So actually pause or stop now and go and watch them, because every information is accumulated for the next video in this series. In this particular video, we're going to talk about ego or fear-based to love. What is ego? A lot of people say or think that ego is just egoism. But ego is a construct. It's a construct and it's a part of who we are. Now, we chose to have an ego because this is a type of experience. The ego is fear-based. In other words, the ego is afraid of change, and that's the number one rule of ego. In other words, it tries to protect us from itself, but it doesn't really understand that. So an ego is a part of an experience that is a dual experience. And if you haven't watched the video about the dual experience, now it's time to watch it. And what is spirit? Because we are moving between ego, selfishness, into spirituality. Spirit actually means complete unity, a non-dual experience. We are already spirit that has chosen to have a very short experience as an ego. Now, those of you that believe in incarnations then understand that we are actually shifting or alternating polarities between spirit and between ego. The more developed an individual will become, the more spirit-like he will become. In other words, he will suffer less from negative emotions. He will have less challenges in life. He'll have more synchronicities. But what really defines the ego? The ego is not just the selfishness of the person. The ego, again, is a construct. There is no getting rid of the ego unless you are some sort of, high conscious guru that is sitting and meditating all day in the Himalayas, but then they don't really face the challenges of life and the grounding of every person, just like us, that we have a job and a family and everything like that. When we are moving between ego, a fear-based reality, what we have right now on planet Earth, we have wars and we have famine and we have dangerous climate changes, and we have a lot of people that are in suffering, a lot of people that are just not enjoying life. If you look at Maslow's pyramid of needs, you will see that a lot of people are still in that physical place that they can't even shift to recognition, to society. And when we are shifting between ego to spirit, we're actually shifting between a 3D perspective and existence to a 5D perspective. One of the things that you will notice is a difference in time, a difference in feelings. In other words, it's negative feelings that are replaced with positive feelings. It's non-trust that is replaced with complete trust and acceptance. And I want to review with you a list of the different things that make us move between the ego towards the love. The first change that you're going to notice that is already happening inside yourself, but you should become more aware of, is the differences between a separate experience and a unity experience. In a separate experience, we take care of those closest to us, those that we define as our love. In a unity experience, we take care of those that we don't even know. And of course, there's different degrees. For example, in a separate experience, we're probably going to eat meat because we don't care about the process that the meat endured on the way to our plate. In a unity experience, we have compassion for animals that we didn't really know. In a separate experience, we'll only take care of those closest to us, like our family. We'll take care of number one first. We'll think about ourselves. In a unity experience, we will donate from our time. We'll volunteer. We will think about others before we're thinking about ourselves. Another shift occurs from fear to love. Fear, it means I'm afraid of everything. And I'm not talking about the extreme example of fear. It is the small things. Fear of change, fear of what other people are thinking about me, stage fear, even afraid of heights, fear of death, fear of not living my life, fear of everything, pretty much everything. And it moves into love. Love, it means I'm accepting myself as I am. I'm not afraid to change because I understand that life is change. Life equals change. We always change. That's the only constant, So we're moving from a fear-based mentality of I'm afraid of everything small, and you will see how many of your thoughts are fear-based right now. Every thought that you have about the future is about the future that hasn't happened until now. Therefore, I'm a little bit afraid of it. So if I haven't experienced something like psychedelic drugs, or I haven't experienced a threesome, or I haven't experienced so many different things, I'm afraid of them. Why? Because I don't know what it's going to be like. And that's where the ego kicks in. The ego he likes to keep us in our comfort zone, and that's the fear. That's why the ego is based in fear. The next change is from egoism to altruism, also called service to self to service to others. In other words, when we get into that high vibration and we become, being more fulfilled and happy with life, we start noticing that we actually healed most of the burdens, and we actually started life stage 2 without the struggle, the drama, and without the challenges that we once had. It will be an awakening. It just occurs that one day you wake up and you realize that everything is fine. And then from service to self, in other words, facing the challenges that we once had, blaming other people, telling different stories, talking about the traumas that we had in life, we're moving towards service to others. Now, service to others doesn't necessarily mean that we have to serve humanity like the Dalai Lama. It can be a smile. It can be helping an old lady cross the road. It can be like what I'm doing, all these YouTube videos that I'm taking my time in order to invite other people to view the world in a little bit different way. But it means that I'm vibrating in a way that I feel like I need to serve. I need to help because I've reached a certain, you can say that vibration or a certain degree of positive emotions, and it's time for me to share my knowledge in different ways, of course. A mother can share her love to her children, a good friend can help other friends. But again, when we're talking about complete unity, it will be about the service of humanity. Another property of ego-based towards love-based is when we are in the ego base, we are fighting with reality. When we are in the non-ego or non-duality, we are in high acceptance. Now, fighting reality actually means that I'm trying to change things that are outside of myself. So for example, I will talk about the government, or I will talk about the media, or I will try to change my partner because I don't accept them as they are, so I keep complaining about them. I will complain about the weather. I will complain about the fact that I don't have any money, thus creating the situation where I don't have any money, because that's exactly the way that manifestation works. So in the ego-based, I'm fighting with reality all the time. My thoughts are trying to protect me from any change. So I will, you can say, judge everything that I see from my own perspective of things, giving it good values or wrong values, understanding that everything I see or perceive as good is the ultimate way of living, and everything that I perceive as bad is the negative way. Now, on the other side, we have acceptance, total acceptance of things as they are. Now, it doesn't mean that we're not trying to change. We just understand that we can try to change, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work. We accept reality and people as they are. We accept the fact that everybody is different. We accept the fact that everybody is in a different place in their own conscious awakening. The process can be very, very slow for some people. The process can be very, very fast for other people. So we accept ourselves as we actually are. And that's the beauty of things, because when you accept yourself as imperfectly perfect, then you're not trying to change yourself that much. You learn to love the person that you are, and then naturally things begin unfolding for you. The next change is between overthinking. In other words, the ego always keeps the mind occupied with thoughts about the future that hasn't happened. Again, it's a fear-based thought, or thoughts about the past where we failed. Why did that person break our heart? Why did we fail in creating that business? Why did we make the bad decision that day? Why did that person say something bad about us in the office? Everything like that. That's called overthinking. And we're moving towards no thinking. Now, no thinking doesn't mean that we're going to be dumbasses. It just means that we stop over-occupying the mind and we move into beingness. Beingness is being much more in the present. It means that I'm breathing. My breathing is not shallow. My breathing is deep. It means that I'm more aware and alert to my body, to my mind, to my thoughts. I see the thoughts that are coming and I have more control over them. I see when judgment is coming. I see when a negative judgment is coming. I catch it and I know how to change it. That's the difference. And when you do it 3 or 4 times, you see that that layer of additional judgment just disappears. And then again, you move into no thinking. No thinking is much more like being. When you look at your cat, that's what you see. When you look at your kids, that's exactly what you see. The next feature is moving from duality to non-duality. Now, I made a whole video about this, but if we give it a 2-minute elevator speech, duality is the experience of thinking that what I'm doing is good and therefore other people are bad. It's from hot to cold, it's male and female. It's having the experience of the contrast itself. Now, when we are moving toward the non-dual, again, we're becoming much more present. We're thinking much more in a way that is profoundly higher perspective than anything else. In other words, we see ourselves from the outside. So if we have an argument with someone, we don't see them as wrong and us as right. We see both of the sides from the side. And then it doesn't become an argument at all. It becomes a discussion. So viewing reality from a non-dual existence is where spirit actually resides. Spirit is non-dual. The Creator, for example, is completely non-dual. The Creator doesn't judge. Only the Bible and different religions made it because we're trying to humanize the Creator itself or creation itself, giving it the properties that we have, human beings, giving it emotions. God is punishing us. God is mad at us. God loves us. Love is God. We are God. God is love. Everything is together. That's the non-dual perspective, understanding that we have a contrast here. Love, the contrast of love is fear, for example, and that's only in duality, the perspective of duality. The next shift between ego and spirit is from misalignment to synchronicity. Misalignment is that you will notice that some things in your life are not working out. It can be your relationship, it can be that you're not happy to wake up to work, it can be, your relationship with your mom, with your dad, it can be your abundance, money that you want a little bit more because you don't have enough. That is shifting towards synchronicity. And synchronicity means that things are happening by themselves. For example, a lot of people that see the 11-11 everywhere, or 1, 2, 3, 4, all these type of hints and clues that something is going on. Synchronicity is when we wanted something and suddenly the next day our friend calls us and says that it doesn't need theirs and they want to give it to us. Synchronicity is when we're looking for a new business and that business finds us. Every one of us has multiple examples of what it means to be in higher synchronicity. And again, when we're shifting between ego and spirit, we will get a lot more synchronicities happening to us. And it's already happening. You probably noticed that when you let go of the expectation to find something, that thing finds you. The next change between ego and spirit is between self-exploration, the person that we define ourselves as exploring spirituality. We want more knowledge, into the self-knowing. In the self-knowing, you don't need a lot. You don't need to read a lot of books. You don't need to meditate that much because you are in a meditative state all the time. You are in the beingness. So the self-knowing doesn't need that much. And then naturally you will have downloads, like what I do. I have a lot of new information coming in. I'm putting things together. When I want to have a new exercise for my pupils, for my students, in one of my workshops, I go into a meditative state, understanding that all I need is to have the intention of finding it, and it will come naturally in the best way and not from my mind. The next and the last one is when we are in the ego-based, we are seeking spirituality. Now, some people won't call it spirituality. Some people will say seeking money. Some people will say seeking experience. Some people will say seeking self-exploration. But when we are in the ego-based, we are seeking something outside of ourselves. And when we are in the spirit-based, we are just being. When we are just being, we don't need anything outside of ourselves. We do not declare happiness as something that is like a salary, like a relationship, like our children, like our health. Happiness is not that. When we are in the spirit, we actually understand that happiness is a choice, a conscious choice that we make, and you don't need anything to become happy because you are, by definition, the human being is happy. So when we are in the ego-based, we have a lot more thoughts about the depression, about what we didn't do right, what we should do, and what we can do even better, and how we can improve, and what is the next step for us. And we're looking for something outside of ourselves. But when we are in the spirit, we just are. We understand that everything is as it is, and we embrace life and enjoy life. So how do we actually move from ego to spirit? There's many different practices. Some of them is meditation that makes us reduce our overthinking and become more aware of our body, our breath, and the nothingness that is our true thoughts. In other words, meditation encourages non-duality. Another way is yoga. Another way is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of focusing on just one thing at a time. So, for example, when you're watching television, don't eat. Or when you're taking a shit, don't use your phone. Or when you're having a conversation, don't wait until the other person finishes talking so you can talk, but be more humble and just listen. In mindfulness, there's also a bunch of practices that you can do. The easiest is to just take a walk with absolutely nothing, no cell phone, nothing at all. take a very, very slow walk and just become more mindful of your body, of your breath, of your thoughts. Another tool that you can use is awareness. Everything that I actually give on my YouTube channel, all the different exercises they can do, optimism, seeing your positive compass, for example, all of those things are going to help you shift from ego-based to spirit-based. But I think the number one that I will actually use is awareness. And when I'm talking about awareness, it's not about just being in the present moment all the time. It is about being aware of your thoughts and working with your thoughts. In other words, a negative thought came in, accept it, embrace it, and then learn how you can avoid getting it again. See the positive in almost everything. Become aware of your emotions. Why aren't you using all the spectrum of your emotions? Why don't you feel the sadness and cry? Why don't you feel as happy and joyful as a little child? All those things are a game of awareness. There are, of course, the rules of non-judgment, and 99% of our thoughts are about judging our environment, judging our spouse, judging the people around us, judging our boss, judging humanity, judging the weather. So when you practice non-judgment, again, you will see that you are actually reducing the amount of thoughts that you have, and you're becoming happier, because non-judgment actually means acceptance of everything as it is. And you really want to accept things as they are, because when we are not taking responsibility for our life, when we are blaming other people for the way that we feel, even though it feels kind of logic to blame somebody else for judging me, somebody else for putting me down or saying something bad about me, but it's not their fault. It's the way that we take it in. So we are the one that's responsible. And when you take responsibility for your thoughts and your emotions, then you begin taking responsibility for the rest of your life. And then you understand how much power you have as a co-creator and a manifester. In other words, you are God in God's way, and you have the godly abilities to create your life as you see fit. Namaste, my friends. Thank you very much for staying all the way to the end. I love you, and I will see you in my next video.